To call this regular meeting of the council to order at 7:05 p.m. Can we stand for a moment of silent reflection? Thank you very much. And we will move on to the mayor's address. On behalf of myself and council, I am pleased to extend best wishes and continued health to Myrtle Boots, who celebrated her 100th birthday on Monday, October the 5th, 2020. The certificate recognizing this milestone has been sent to Mrs. Boots. On Thursday, September 17th, 2020, I attended the annual AGM for Charlewoods Outdoor Education Center. The executive of Charlewoods has approved the recommendation to develop an educational virtual tour of Charlewoods to be utilized by the school board partners. At the time of the meeting, only the French School Board has renewed their Charlewoods funding commitment for 2020. The Charlewoods executive has requested COVID signage from Algona Wilberforce. I have 4 signs, and that's wrong. It should be 3 signs that have been delivered to Charlewoods. On Wednesday, September 23rd, 2020, I attended the virtual AGM for the Eganville District Senior Center. In spite of the challenges COVID has presented, service to the seniors has continued, with volunteers providing 7,966 hours of service. They've assisted 153 clients with income tax, provided 1,799 meals to 54 clients, transportation for 104 clients. You got ahead of me. Home maintenance for 14 clients, social and safety assistance for 12 clients, and frozen meals to 7 clients. On Friday, September 25th, 2020, I attended a Wishart Law virtual webinar on building communities presented by Peter Kenyon. This presentation was very timely as it reinforced the objectives of our own strategic plan. Some of the main points of the presentation identified by Mr. Kenyon were: COVID has rebirthed community spirit, and we owe it to our community to aim higher. We need to move our community mindset in a different direction. Residents should not be viewed as customers, but rather partners. The municipality's primary role should be to strengthen community as opposed to service community. The future of every community lies in capturing the passion, imagination, and resources of the people within. Recognizing that whatever the issue, community is the answer. Inspire others to dream more, learn more, and become more. An effective strategic plan needs a leadership development strategy with appropriate funding to support it. Also on Eganville 25th, 2020, I attended a Wilkins Trail Committee meeting with the Eganville Sportsman's Club to discuss the Sportsman Club's concerns with the trail development. On Wednesday, September 30th, 2020, I attended the Council County meeting. My report from County Council is attached to the agenda as item 7.8. That's it for my mayor's address. Can I get a mover and a seconder to accept the mayor's address as presented? Moved by Councilor Schoenfeld, seconded by Councilor Robinson. Councilor Buchwald?
Yes.
Councilor Burns?
Yes.
Councilor Reiki Schoenfeld?
Yes.
Councilor Robinson?
Yes.
Yes, that's carried. Thank you. Is that a good case? Okay. So are there any declarations of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none, We'll move to item 5, which is the adoption of the minutes. I have a resolution that council accepts the September 15, 2020 regular council minutes and the March 12 special council minutes. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Robinson, seconded by Councilor Burns. Are there any additions, corrections, or omissions? Seeing none, Councilor Bucklow?
Yes.
Councilor Burns?
Yes.
Councilor Reiki-Schoenfeld?
Yes.
Councilor Robinson?
Yes.
I'm a yes, that's carried. Thank you. We have no delegations tonight, so we'll move on to item 7, which is department reports. I have a resolution that council accepts the fire department in-house training report as presented and authorizes the CAO to sign a training partner agreement with CartSAP Services for first aid training, and further that Councilor Buckwalt inquire of the Integrity Commissioner with his role as a councillor, employee, and or contractor of the township with a conflict of interest. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Byrd, seconded by Councilor Robinson. Questions or comments from Councilor Reiki-Schoenfeld?
This might be a little off topic. Can residents also go for the training when you have the training days, or is it just for firefighters?
That would be a decision of council if they wanted to include members of the public in the training program. Generally, it's for employees and members of the organization, so that you're not competing with the private enterprise.
And how many people would be at a training session?
With one instructor, you can do a maximum of 16 participants in a class.
So would you see yourself doing like one session a year?
Traditionally, that's how it's been done. The hope, as I mentioned before, we have a couple of individuals that are interested in becoming instructors through the program. As an instructor trained on certify them. So we do full first aid training, which is good for 3 years. Then every 3 years, we need a refresher of the same program, a repeated version, or a full refresher. We also do target responder training, which is offshore administration and so forth, that should be done more frequently. But again, it all depends on how fire department organizes it at that time. It could be done, it could be once a year, twice a year, just a matter of availability of instructors and willingness to do it.
At school, what we did was, because that special high skills major, one of their certifications was first aid, so we actually did a trainer, and we hired into that person that qualified, so they could present to the school kids, which decreased our cost. I'm just saying, we talked about the fact that a lot of our budget does go towards the fire department and stuff, and you know how like maybe we have to show the benefit of having a fire department in, and I'm just thinking, and I don't know how many people would ever want to get recertified. I'm just saying, if there were 16 places, let's say, but you have 10 people, employees and stuff, and there was 6 extra places, maybe it's something that we could open up. I'm just thinking, like, for kids going away to school and they're doing anything in the health management stuff, lots of them need first aid and CPR. I'm just thinking maybe it's a way of giving back to the community because we have that. I'm just putting it out there just as a thought. You know, it might be just a way of, you know, saying, hey, we have got a great volunteer fire department, and here's one benefit of having it. And like at our school, I would have people that needed to be recertified. The kids that were in the program, it didn't cost them anything, but the kids, some people coming back just to research, I would charge them half of whatever it costs, or make them just cover the cost of the books or the materials. And just putting it out there, it's just something to do, which is kind of on passive. But I do think it's a great way of doing it, and it does keep your costs down, which is awesome. Plus, too, there's a greater flexibility because you can run the program where it's tailored to you and to your group of individuals wanting to take it. As before, if you're going somewhere, then you got to fit into their slot.
If you got to fit into their slot, their schedule, and they give you the generic course, like what traditionally happened with us is we focus more on the things that we're more likely to
Right.
experience. So we meet the requirements of what we have to do, and then we do the elective modules that match our needs. It's worked out, I think it's worked out really well for the last number of years. And again, I do want to say on record, just what we're discussing it. I received no compensation from Hearts after this. There's no kickbacks, there's no commissions, there's no salaries, nothing like that. This is just a benefit in common that I have through my involvement with the fire department.
I had a question, Councilor Buckwalk, and it's basically around the training. You said you could accommodate 16. I would assume that not all 16 members of the fire department would be able to attend on a specific date, or is that something that they usually plan ahead far enough that they would be able to book that time?
In the past, what we've done is we'll pick a date a month or two down the road. Traditionally, we've done it in the winter. It's a good thing that we do it over the weekend. For the standard level with the target responder. We've ranged anywhere from 10 to 14 over the last few years, just depending on shift availability and stuff like that. Again, 16 is the maximum for one instructor under the program. At my workplace, I taught for one, which makes for a very long 2 days. But again, we normally can field a pretty good class to make it work. So yeah, there's a potential for vacancies there. And it doesn't have to be the fire department, and public works, it'd be office staff. Like anybody within the organization that should have the training or want the training. Again, as far as going outside of it to the public, that would be something we have to look at down the road. Because again, we don't want to be seen as competing with the private sector as well for this kind of stuff.
I just think it's a good way to give back. And stuff. Like I can think maybe somebody on the Girl Guides, you know, they might.
Girl Guides, other nonprofit groups, other community groups.
That's right. Like even the rec, like there might be somebody on the rec committee that, you know, would like to have it. So it's kind of.
I do like the idea of our own staff getting the first opportunity to fill those spaces, whether it's public or city office staff. And I know for myself, I would certainly feel more comfortable if you get an opinion from the integrity commissioner to make sure that there's no conflict of interest.
And I'm in favor of that being managed the resolution. I have no issue with that. I'm confident that it'll be fine.
Any other?
That was part of the resolution?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Councilor Buckwalk,
Yes.
Councilor Burns,
Yes.
Councilor Rankin-Schoenfeld,
Yes.
Councilor Robinson.
Yes.
I'm a yes, that's carried. Thank you. Item 7.2 is the biosolids and paper waste burn. I have a resolution that council accepts the biosolids and paper waste report and directs staff to bring forward in November a bylaw that will permit the township to limit, prohibit, and or control the use of products that contain paper waste biosolids for the construction of structures or deposited in the township. Can I get a mover and second? Moved by Councilor Robinson, seconded by Councilor Burns. And maybe I'll ask staff to give a little more background on this.
So this isn't something that is coming to us today or tomorrow, but other municipalities have dealt with paper waste biosolids. I put the example of Oshawa in your report. Basically, you have no control over them coming into your area if you don't have a bylaw in place. What it comes. And what this is Atlantic Packaging produces thousands and thousands of tons of paper biosolids a day waste. And this has inks and chemicals in it. And under the regulation 347 of the Ministry of Environment, if you mix a waste with something else, you can create a product. So to put it really simply, if you have 1,000 tons or tons of paper biosolids, it's a waste that you have to put in a landfill and have to pay for it. But if you mix it with clay to a certain amount, you dilute the volume, and you're able to make a waste product into a usable product. So they created a product called Sandsorb, and the product Nitrosorb, and it's used and still is being used at den clubs all over Canada. For Huntsville, for example, a 17-acre site, just for the burn, they used over 1,000 53-foot and ton trucks. Now, it's a 17-acre site, it's a lot of material. And if the Ministry of Environment hasn't made a firm ruling on it, the only ruling they have is that it needs to be monitored forever, so well. So when that cost becomes prohibitive to the gun club or wherever it is, Sutton Airport actually have it now, then they walk away and municipalities end up holding the bag for that. So I had a conversation with the president of the gun club. They have no problem with us enacting that. They don't want it there. They understand what happens of it. Just to prevent it, we have to have something in place. It may never come up, but if it comes up tomorrow, you won't be prepared. It just gives you control.
There's other biosolids too, like the stuff that comes from a waste treatment plant, right? Or
Yes, and so they are used in compost, and some of that is improved, but they have different standards for human biosolids than they do for paper waste. Paper waste is mainly the residual chemicals in the ink.
is that something we should look at too?
So
Just because I think, and I'm not sure, I know that there are waste septic people that dump on fields, and I know you must have ministry approval, right? But does the ministry approval trump the township approval?
So municipal wastewater is under a completely different regulation.
Right.
And it's not controlled the same. But there are controls for that product. So when you have a human biosolid, there are controls for that. And as you may or may not know, back in the 90s, we were to phase out land application of septic waste. That didn't happen, it's still going on. But they do have to have Ministry of Environment approval. I think it's beyond the ability of the township to approve or disapprove. But I believe the ministry does a good job on that.
Because I didn't know if we should have a bylaw saying, you know, if the person's dumping on non-property, they have to come to non first, and then they go to the ministry to get specific approval. Well, we could, say.
One thing we could do, and staff will work on in the future, is you can have a bylaw that controls composting and odors from composting. And that's what we end up with your human waste biosolids. Or in compost in general, really smells. So it's something you can look at in the future. This is just one of those little check marks to put in place that would protect the municipality.
So it's really dealing with paper waste biosolids.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't, yeah. Okay.
I don't know if you go to the Sutton Fair and Wilberforce, but if you ever go there, look at the airport and look at how much material is thrown in the airport there.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Councilor Buckwell?
Can I see the resolution now? It's written, please? So should we just say, go buy a solid paper waste and take out the end there? Because really truly we're dealing with the prime solid paper waste issue, right? Not other biosolids, just to be specific. You know what I'm trying to say?
So what the reason I put that in is if the product wasn't deemed a biosolid, then we're still covering paper waste. If it's in a form that it's not going to decompose, I just want to make sure there's no other way of slipping in.
Okay, because when I read that, I think of biosolids too being waste from waste treatment plants and stuff like that. I think it's,
Does say near the end that it's prohibited and control the use of products that contain paper waste biosolids.
so I'm just thinking up there, we could get rid of the can, because we're kind of saying, anyway.
Right.
Just to get rid of it.
We could stroke the end of it if you'd like to do that.
Okay, I feel better with that. Is-
Council okay with that as a friendly amendment? So I'll reread it, that council accepts the biosolids paper waste report and directs staff to bring forward in November a bylaw that will permit the township to limit, prohibit, and control the use of products that contain paper waste biosolids for the construction of structures that are deposited in the township. Councilor Bucknall,
Yes.
Councilor Burns,
Yes.
Councilor Rakeshonko,
Yes.
Councilor Robinson,
Yes.
I'm a yes, that's carried. Thank you. Item 7.3 is the COVID report update. I have a resolution that council accepts the COVID-19 update report. Can I get a mover in a second? Moved by Councilor Burns, seconded by Councilor Robinson.
Well, I can go through this if you-
Sure.
So this was report was done on the premise of things are going to get worse before they get better, and that's what we keep being told. So the first one becomes somewhat redundant, that NAS required all attending council meetings until individual workstations are in place for this to happen. So as long as you're at your workstation, you don't require a mask. No physical attendance for public at council meetings, we continue that. We met with the audiovisual technicians last week to come up with better solutions for council, and we'll be bringing something forward on that. We've now had to, by legislation, do data screening of all of our employees. So as our employees come in every morning, they fill out 3 questions, a questionnaire. I haven't decided about how right now, but we've set it up as one sheet for the whole week, and they just basically check if they have any conditions. The mandatory visitor screening, we've been doing that for quite a long time. And I will get back on it with some, there's that electronic one for council to check off. Maybe we can do that even through that, just so we don't do it every time we come in. We do have 2 work-at-home stations with access to the township server, and we set this up in March, and we haven't had to send all our staff home. I used it when I was staying at home under my lockdown in March. But we have the ability to do the functions of this office in other locations if we want to. So that's something we have in place for COVID. The service window is great, and the new window should be here next week. We're continuing to keep the township office closed. A whole different set of rules come in place. We start letting people in, but we've had no issues. We bring people here, invite them in, we sit them down, we'll block, really works good. The non-contact payment of transfer sites continues. One of the parting words of our treasurer was he can't believe how honest and how well our collection system works with anything at the transfer sites. And this week, I think it's in here, we actually have put a non-contact management of cash. So we know the counting machine to count the coins coming in. It cuts down on the handling of the money, and it also increases the speed of the process. After Thanksgiving, the play structures and washrooms are closed. We're not going to do any more narcotic rentals. We are required to do more cleaning, a cleaning regime. And we have the ability to have some part-time students stay and just, we can help them do the cleaning. So these workstations that we're in tonight need to be cleaned tomorrow or tonight. before someone else moves to the workstation. So those are the rules that are put in place. We haven't been doing more than just once a night, once a weekend cleaning for the office. Having the contractor is cost prohibitive. Having a student for a couple hours isn't. So we're going to implement that to clean the office on a schedule, and we'll still have a once-a-week cleaning for the whole thing. And I said that we plan meetings outside, planning meetings outside, so that's if we have a planning meeting. We have it outside, or we have it at the cottage or Golden Lake, just better than this. Yes, ma'am.
We had the cottage rented for a couple of weeks or something.
It was rented for a little bit, or it was down from what we expected, but we did, I guess it was up from what we expected, we expected nothing. But we did have positive comments about the cottage and the improvements that we made and the efficiencies in the cottage. Another thing that we have done is we've established a wellness committee. And basically, it's a committee of 2 supervisors, myself and Mr. O'Neill, and 2 workers. And we meet once a week after lunch on Thursdays, just to discuss how everything's going and how comfortable people are with the things we put in place. We'll have a report for the next meeting of where we are with the funding, the 110,000. I wasn't able to get one for this meeting, but we're diligently trying to use as much as possible so that we may be eligible for more. Talking about another spot on the agenda. Any questions on
Councilor Buckle?
Andrew, with the limitation on non-township events, I know we have 2 regular users in Golden Lake. Have they been affected by this, or are they continuing?
So, because of their use, there is a guideline and requirement for religious services. So that one is okay. And the Girl Guides of Canada have a protocol for what they can do. So I'm comfortable with the 2 regular users we have. But at this time, can we rent out? At this time, it says no more than 6 people for a rental. But a different use, and the Girl Guides, I don't even think are needed, but the church can do 1/3. But renting something out for 6 people is pretty difficult.
Okay.
Councilor Rankin.
Do you know if they're going to try and fix the spinner and the swings?
At Melissa Bishop. I will check with the staff when they do the shutdown. As to what what has to be done, and we're also working on. We've asked for an extension on Golden Lake because their playground equipment coming to Golden Lake, and it's possible at a good time to do it. So we've asked the government for an extension on that grant.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll ask for the vote. Councilor Buckwalter,
Yes.
Councilor Burns,
Yes.
Councilor Rankin Schoenfeld,
Yes.
Councilor Robinson.
Yes.
And a yes, that's carried. Thank you. Item 7.4 is the township update. I have a resolution that council accepts the township update report as presented, and then moved and seconded. Moved by Councilor Buckwalter, seconded by Councilor Robinson.
So just a quick update on a few things happening. I just put a couple of things together. As the mayor mentioned in his address, we did meet with the Wilkins ad hoc committee and members of the Bill Enforcement Club. I thought it would be an excellent meeting. We were very well received, and we worked very well talking about solutions for their concern, which was possibly trespassing. After the meeting, they took the whole committee on a tour of the ranges. It was a great visit. And we had actually a really productive time. And I think it's the start of actually a very good relationship. We're working on the Digital Main Street grant, and I should have a concept to council for the next meeting. We have until the end of the month basically, we were trying to extend last year's grant to try to expand on it. But we're looking at a couple of different avenues because there wasn't a lot of engagement after the fact for some of the digital stuff we did. And we're just worried about volume, so we're trying to find a new way, but that'll be coming to the next meeting. The other day I met with the CAO of Orange Valley to discuss bylaw enforcement and control and CBO services. This is from the direction of council. And also with sharing services with the other municipality. And we've got an invitation for the mayor and myself to meet with the mayor and the CAO of Orange Valley on 15th to discuss the two councils coming together and talking about shared services. We have the IT people come in on the 2nd, and we looked at challenges for the council chamber. We've got some things coming forward on how we can make things better. And hooray, 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 Laura posted the first official online agenda on Friday. We have a few little hurdles, but that's the way it's going to be from now on.
Any questions or comments? I'd like to thank Laura for getting the new format online, and I do like the way the reports are presented. Certainly is it's very user friendly. It takes a little bit of time to get used to the change, but it seems to work well. So I'll call for the vote. Councillor Buckwell,
Yes.
Councillor Burns,
Yes.
Councillor Rankin-Schoenfeld,
Yes,
Councillor Robinson,
Yes.
yes, that's carried. Thank you. Item 7.5 is the county's community service awards. I have a resolution that council approves staff completing an application for the 2020 Warden's Community Service Award in the not-for-profit organization category for Anaja Najim, or better known as the Sharing Place Food Bank in Golden Lake, coordinated by Dale Benoit Gore.
good job.
You have to excuse my pronunciation.
No, what Steve Jack told me, because when I was taking school, there was all the Soviet republics. He said, just say with confidence, nobody's going to know. Yeah, okay.
Can I get a mover in a second? Moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Buckwell. Any comments, questions? Councillor Rankin-Schoenfeld.
I think it is a great, because I mean, she's done a lot and we knew there was a need and she took it upon herself to find a place and get all the documents signed and do all the legwork. And I mean, and it is a benefit to the community for sure. And she took it upon herself to do it. So kudos to her and her helpers.
Councillor Brady.
Got a question for you, Councilor. Is this every council has to do this, or anybody can pick this?
This goes to,
County?
from the county to every municipality.
Okay.
So you can nominate as a council, you can nominate as an individual, you can nominate in all three categories, you can nominate one. It's entirely up to whatever your choices may be.
What are the other categories?
There's one for, I think, a business, and then there's one for individual or individuals. I think last year, pharmacy product. Yeah, I can't remember who, the pharmacy was. Yeah, that could be, yes. And just to follow up on Councillor Rankin-Schoenfeld's comment, I do agree that I don't know if anybody has worked harder than Bill to try and get the food bank up and running. She certainly had a number of hurdles that she overcame, and she's gone above and beyond. Has worked very closely with the county. In fact, engaged the county to get some more funding to do some more meals for residents that are shut-ins, residents and seniors in particular. So yeah, she's doing an outstanding job.
And it's pretty COVID times.
Exactly.
Which I'm sure was another big
Inside of it.
No, it's a really good choice.
Yeah, there's the categories there, the for-profit businesses, the not-for-profit, and individuals. So I'll call for the vote. Councillor Buckwell,
Yes.
Councillor Burns,
Yes.
Councillor Ragland-Johnson,
Yes?
Councillor Robinson,
Yes.
and a yes, that's carried. Thank you. Item 7.6 is the asset management and strategic plan update. I have a resolution that council accepts the PGT update report and further that staff provide PGT with instruction to provide a report on purchasing options for citywide software. Can I get a move in a second? Moved by Councillor Buckwell, seconded by Councillor Robinson. Staff want to provide background?
Sure. So just on the asset management, I'll cover the strategic plan. Strategic plan would be October 6th, or 20th, sorry, 20th at 6 p.m. On Backers Day. And I confirmed that today with Brian. The other thing is we, as council looked at citywide software, and some of council saw the presentation of the other company that was very difficult to manage and very French. TGT suggests that the other companies that have what we want are completely American, and all the support would be American, and they're recommending that that may not be the best fit for us, especially in COVID times. So the council was happy that they're looking at the citywide, then TGT would bring back a purchasing proposal of how, best ways to go about buying it. So basically, they're just waiting for the next step after our last week. So they just need us to say, yeah, bring us back some information on purchasing citywide. Yeah, it was a very good software. It was the best for that.
Comments or questions from council? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Councillor Buckwell,
Yes.
Councillor Burns,
Yes.
Councillor Ragland-Johnson,
Yes?
Councillor Robinson,
Yes.
I'm a yes, that's carried. Item 7.7 is the county update. I have a resolution that council accepts the October County Council update, and further that staff make arrangements to make the Golden Lake Community Center available to the Renfrew County District Health Unit for the purpose of providing a location to facilitate flu vaccine inoculations. And further that the Township of North Algona Wilberforce supports the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus through the Eastern Ontario Regional Networks project to bring 1G to all of Eastern Ontario. And further that the mayor be authorized to sign a letter of support. Can I get a mover to seconder? Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Robinson. Any comments or questions? Councillor Ragland-Johnson.
So any idea why the county is going with the 1G as opposed to anything else?
The reason they're wanting to move forward with the 1G is that because of COVID has increased the traffic on the internet, especially for people who are working from home, for children who are learning at home. The 5010 was the original proposal, and their feeling is that by building more capacity now, it would be less expensive than trying to come back in 2 or 3 years with another proposal to generate more funding. The Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus is pushing to say, let's just do it now, let's just get it done, let's build the capacity, and we don't have to come and revisit this in 3 or 4 years.
And they're pushing the federal and provincial governments to put more funding in, and there certainly has been movement in that direction from both the federal government and the provincial government. So they're really hoping that because of the internet challenges that we've had in our areas, that this is something that is really necessary.
So they're not necessarily always going to fiber optic.
Actually, that was,
Because I kind of read that when I was confused when you said the 1G.
but that is how they want to deliver it.
It's through
It's through
fiber optic.
fiber optics.
That's what 1G is 1G, like that's the speed. It's not like 1G versus 5G.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
that's-
Yes, thank you, Councillor Buckle.
And so then why would they ask for more? Just because they think this is a doable amount?
Keep the internet's about where the best you can get.
I think that's where a lot of the larger centers, cities are with 1G, so they want to they want to deliver the same service to the rural municipalities.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Any other comments? I'll call for the vote. Councillor Buckle,
Yes.
Councillor Burns,
Yes.
Councillor Rankin-Johnson,
Yes.
Councillor Robinson,
Yes.
and yes, that's carried. Item 7.8 is the CBO report. They have a resolution that council accepts the report on chief building official and will bring forward by the end of November a detailed report that includes timelines, costing, and an entering plan to bring building inspection services in-house. And further, the report will provide at least 2 viable options for in-house services. Staff, can I get a mover and a second? Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Buckle. Council wanted to explain a little more of the background. Sorry, staff.
So, with our letters that went to the staff have been looking at ways to bring, possibly the building inspecting in-house. To do that, we would have to train some staff and give you a little bit of an idea of what the timelines are to training. The biggest challenge with doing it ourselves, besides fact we have to train, this would require a mentor program to have another CBO to assist us. But if council is interested in doing it in-house or doing it with a contract or even going back to BV, what we're saying is we'll come back to council in, I think, a month and a half and give you a full detailed report. We'll put all the work into it as to contacting some other municipalities about having mentoring services. We haven't done that yet. And then we know what it's going to cost to do it. And we would have to do similar thing that we did to the bylaw enforcement team. Basically, we put it out there for interested members of our staff to apply. And if there is interest in that, then we would have them go and train. And my thing is always to have someone in place in case someone gets hit by a train. So we don't want to have 2 people trained to go through one. So if council's interested, we do that.
To be a chief building officer, do you need to be like, I don't know, a carpenter, like a red seal apprentice?
Not to do it, no. But you need to have the knowledge in each one of the modules that you can do that inspection. And yes, the carpenter going to need to have somewhat of an advantage. And actually, some of the training you can if you've got like a red seal, you can miss some of the training basically if you have some qualifications. But you're taught how to inspect the job as opposed to how to build the job yourself.
And do we need another person trained, or could we like borrow somebody from another municipality? If something were to happen, a person in operation, and they can't Because there's not always, the building inspector, it's not like in our township, they're going around all the time.
So the thoughts again on having that backup is if you're training someone and they have to go out of town to be trained, it's cheaper to send two people at the same time, full market economical. And if we went forward and trained, let's say Kevin, because he's here, and we trained Kevin to be the chief building official, and he said, no, I've already got too many hats, I don't want to do this anymore, then we're going to do it somewhere. He's already said that, I can see it in the paper now. So, but if we train Laura also, she may, she'll be the people that are here. She may, you know, it's better to have two people that are qualified. And we have a very qualified inventory of staff, especially in the fire department, that have some courses that are going to be included in what chief building inspector needs. So there's an advantage to that. You could train the second person that never used it too. It's up to council to bring forward the proposal. The biggest thing that we would have to have is some sort of mentoring program to have another building official help us out for the first 12 months. There's some of the inspections that our building inspector would be able to do before the qualification, but you will need a mentoring person, and it's going to be an outside contractor. And maybe we do it with BD, I don't know, which is something you can discuss. But we'd have all that information in place for council for the next report.
And then your report would have like a costing out, like.
So we're doing basically the idea of how much it's going to cost, based on what we do now. So the your startup $5,000 training cost, $5,000 a person. There's a membership which helps us it lessens the cost of the training and gives you a resource. And then based on the existing contract, about $35,000 a year, and then projected travel and supplies about $10,000. And then we would look at one of the things we really need to look at that we don't have now is cost recovery. So if you're spending $45,000 on building inspections and you're only bringing in $20,000, you know, the idea of the program is to cover itself, to be like a user pay. So those things would have to be adjusted. And then there's some residual stuff that we could do with Lone Shore Valley. We own part of the truck, so we have residual asset value there that we have to make arrangements, which may lower the cost on that first year too.
So are you projecting our CBO being $35,000? No.
Based on the numbers from what BD is charging us. So basically, it's costing us around $55,000. So this is going to cost about the same amount at this time. It's going to go up and down with building. More building, it goes higher, and you've got more cost recovery. Lower buildings. This wouldn't be where it is right now. No matter what happens, we pay the same wage.
Right.
With what we're proposing for staff, it would be only when there's inspections.
Right. So then the possibility.
So our cost may go considerably down, and if it goes considerably up, we're building our tax base into it.
Yeah, that's right. So projecting annual salary could be $20,000.
Yeah, we have it based on something, so we only base it on like this.
Councilor Buckle, your question?
I think it's good that we get a plan put together of what the options are. It'll be interesting too to see what Ultra Valley, once the mayor and the CEO speak to the mayor and the CEO there, what potential there is for sharing the services, because again, we're talking about CBO, we talk about bylaw, you know, so it's concerned about animal control. I think this is a good step to knowing where we're at going into those discussions, so that we know what's it going to approximately cost us if those discussions come up with those other meetings.
I would agree that this is certainly a really good starting point, and it's a good opportunity before we get into our budget to look at some of these costs to see if there's some efficiencies we can find. Councilor Robinson.
comments you made was, sort of balancing off the cost versus the expenses versus the income. Is that one of the things that we can put forward is potentially increasing revenue base?
So with building it, it's based on how many buildings, but if you're doing a service, which is our inspection service, it should be done out at the end of the year. So that would be our intention, is to get to that point where it's cost neutral.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Councillor Buckwalter.
Yes.
Councillor Byrd.
Yes.
Councillor Reiki Schoenfeld.
Yes.
Councillor Robinson.
Yeah.
And yes, it's carried. Thank you. Item 7.9 is the animal pound report. I have a resolution that council accepts the animal pound report as presented and directs staff to investigate further the option of choice. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Byrd, seconded by Councillor Buckwalter. Background, please call.
So just because we've had some discussion with Wilshire Valley as to, dog costs, and looking into this, just looking at last year, 2019, we paid $3,400 for the service with seven municipalities paid into that for $3,400. And what we got out of that, we paid $50 extra for a dog that wasn't even apprehended, and then we have another dog that was in the kennel for 11 days, $10 a day. So you pay $3,580 for one dog for 11 days. That's what your town cost last year. This year you're going to be paying $4,200, and you're probably paying, at this point, you're paying $1,000 a dog for the year. So what we've done is look at different options, and we put some out there for council and just sort of rough estimates. Here. So if you stay status quo, you're going to pay $4,000 a year. You're going to pay $10 per call, and you're going to pay an hourly rate of mileage for every time they pick up a dog or do something for us. If we contract services out, we may be able to put them in someone else's pound for $30 a night, but that's going to cause some liability issues for us. So that may come to be a little higher when we do really in-depth analysis of it. If we build our own pound on our property, it's going to cost about $25,000, and that's basically mostly for hydro because you'll have to have heat in. One thing we looked at, which we believe will work, is a mobile pound that you can move within the township. And basically, it's the dog house on a trailer. And it would only be the in-house staff doing it. Now, we look, and I've actually had a discussion with Wilshire Valley on this, at doing something like this, where we could move the mobile pound around from different municipalities. And it might be a cost sharing thing where we own 2 or 3 of these pounds, and they just happen to be going with the dog in, because our residency rate in 2019 was only 11 days. And, at your $4,000 a year, even if we were in it by ourselves, in just a little over 2 years, you pay for it.
When you said liability, if we contract out the services, couldn't we have somebody just draw something up?
Well, we could, but we may have to pay a premium for insurance, or, right now, their cost of putting a dog in their little doggy hotel is $30 a night. But when we are bringing the dog in, that may change. They say, well, can you prove the dog's had rabies shots? You can't do that, all those different things. So they may say, well, we usually do it for $30, but we'll do it for you for $100.
And I was confused when I talked about no dog apprehended, we charge That's $50, so they go 5 times trying to catch the dog, and we couldn't catch the dog.
And not having been part of that, that's what it appears that they got called out and they didn't get the dog, so they charged $50, which was a time in my.
Okay.
And then the other dog, they held it for 11 days, which was supposed to be only maximum 7, is what we agreed to. So we ended up paying 110 because they kept up the extra days. Which is small in comparison to the other 3,400 days. But it's a pretty expensive way of keeping dogs.
Councilor Burke.
That, we paid that for 11 days, does that not come back from the person that had the dog, if it comes to fix it up?
If the dog is picked up, then we can try to get that money back. We can now do a better job because we have bylaw.
It does seem like a lot of money for what they did with the money.
So if you had a dog motel on the trip, how would you heat it? With propane?
So unfortunately, it's going to be electric heat. So what we envision is that we catch the one dog, you put it behind the public works building here, and you keep that dog for night. If you have a really bad barking dog, we can take it down Burr Road because everybody's quiet down there. And we can plug it in there. You have to have a hydro source because I don't think a flame would be a good thing for a doggy kennel.
And they should only be kept there for 7 days, and then they would be taken to the euthanize.
That would be something that would be part of our program, what we do for dogs. Hopefully we can connect with a shelter that takes them after the 7 days for us, but that would be something we could do.
Councilor Robinson?
So the big issue would be primarily if we're housing animal in the winter time. Because we have to provide in the summertime.
In the summertime, there wouldn't be that cost.
Right. So, and we don't know what time of the year those costs will.
And we don't know that. And we don't know what the future is when the dogs. Generally, you're going to do more dogs in the non-snow season than you do in the snow season.
Well, when I look at the November, the dog, to me, that's a hell of that dog.
Yeah, November, this week, November.
When they were hunting. So this is something then, when we were doing our budget, that we think about.
And we bring back to you, just when I first looked at this, I thought, well, we'd be better off to give some of our residents $4,000 and they keep all the dogs for us for a year. It's cheaper. But we were looking at the rules with regards to kennels, so our bylaw coordinator been looking at that. So if council wants it more in depth, our favorite choice of the 3 staff is the portable kennel. It just seems the most reasonable and the most likely to be an opportunity with other municipalities to cut the cost down.
Councilor Buckle?
Yeah, so I know there are a number of considerations when you're doing a pound type thing, because the animals have to have room to exercise. So I don't know how well a trailer is going to work for a mobile setting, but they've got to be able to exercise, temperature, water, all that kind of stuff. I think it needs a lot of research into the requirements as to whether or not those numbers would work for us. I mean, if a mobile one would be feasible.
I do know you can buy a fairly big kennel for relatively inexpensive. I mean, if we're looking at ways of reducing stuff overall in the long term, I think you could set something up relatively inexpensive and relatively portable. But maybe it's just we choose what we're going to do. Maybe this year it's the CBO thing, and next year it's the dog kennel thing. Or maybe some of the municipality says, hey, yeah, we can do this, right? Which dramatically will bring down the cost also.
We put a treadmill in the trailer.
Well, I mean, we are spending a lot of money on really not.
We spent a lot of money on the little dog.
Yeah. And if we're looking at ways of reducing costs, right? That would be a way to do it. And maybe now that we have a bylaw officer, we might be getting more dogs. You do see lots of dogs around hunting season, and a lot of the dogs get back to their owners after hunting season. And that's the importance of like educating people to have that tag on their dog. Because then I remember one time a dog came to our place, the tag was a year old, but when I called the township, they were able to tell me who owned that dog from the tag, even though it was a year old, right? And then I called them, oh, I got away. Like they're just one concession over it, but
Any other comments or questions? Councilor Burke.
Can I bylaw, officer pick up the dog and take it to the town now, or do they have to? Yeah, because we need to go on.
So our law enforcement team could take a dog to the town. It's far less expensive for us to do that. It depends on the dog. You know, there's some dogs will say, here, before I get up on the side of the truck, there's some dogs will say, I'm not coming with you, and they'll fight you. So there's special considerations, but yes, our staff can take a dog under certain circumstances.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I will ask for the vote. Councilor Buckle,
Yes.
Councilor Burke,
Yes.
Councilor Ranky Schultz,
yes.
Councilor Robinson,
Yes.
and a yes, and that's carried. Thank you. Item 7.1, 7.10, I should say, is the library report. I have a resolution of council accepts the August-September library report and the library CEO report as presented. I'm going to move in a second, and moved by Councilor Burke, seconded by Councilor Buckle. Any questions, comments on the library report? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Councilor Buckle,
Yes.
Councilor Burns,
Yes.
Councilor Ranky Schultz,
Yes.
Councilor Robinson,
Yes.
and a yes, that's carried. Thank you. Item 8, or the statement of item 8 is the departmental updates. 8.1 is the building permits. I have a resolution that council accepts the April to August building permits update as information. Can I get a mover and a seconded? Moved by Councilor Buckle, seconded by Councilor Robinson. Any comments, questions? Councilor Ranky Schultz?
So when I look at the chart and I have, these are the permits for this year, right? We're at like $2,500 brought in, right? So then basically what you're saying is that if we're paying a X amount of dollars for our chief building officer, that they can go. That's not extremely cost effective either.
No, are you looking for, I haven't got it. You're looking at the whole year what we brought in,
Yeah, yes.
Register.
so there's 24 for, that's 1 month.
And that's 1 month.
And if you scroll down, each one are divided in months.
See, all I see is like the May the 20th, that was $40. Oh, Jeepers Creepers.
More pages.
Oh, I got stuck on the first page. Okay, so the total. Okay, gotcha. I was looking for it grand because I'm thinking, boy, that's not a lot. I see lots of stuff going on like you really.
That looks like actually pretty good for a year like COVID.
I think that lots of people were doing stuff because of that.
Yeah, that's fine. A lot of grabbers.
So just in regards to the service that we received by our CBO, this report is completely generated by our staff. So Don sent out the report completely.
And just for clarification, we do pay for it in fees, and yet our staff are doing.
Our staff is
the admin.
So we're not getting any report.
We're getting the information, but not in a report form.
Okay.
but there's an effort on our part to do it. And I think Don's brought us together very good compared to what we were doing previously.
Yeah, it's very well put together. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Buckwell,
Yes.
Councillor Burns,
Yes.
Councillor Becky Schoenfeld,
Yes.
Councillor Robinson,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, that is carried. Thank you. Item 8.2 is the fire department update. We have a resolution that council accepts the fire department update as presented. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Buckwell, seconded by Councillor Robinson. Any questions? Councillor Becky Schoenfeld.
What happened to the unintended bonfire? Did everybody just scatter?
No, left the property,
And the fire was still continuing?
still smoldering.
And then what happened?
We received a report of smoke from the area. We responded to the evidence that we found.
So then did you talk to the landowner or something?
We put together a package explaining the possible costs of that happened again. And we haven't received any feedback from them.
Councillor Burton.
Well, public assistance over the beer, is that because there's smoke coming out of the beer? That's what you're talking? That's correct. And since this report was put together, there was also another motor vehicle collision / public hazard with power lines on Lake Warrior Road last Thursday.
That's not their power. Like that.
It was. They did a good job. The team pulled it off.
And I just wanted to say again, you know, thank you so much to the fire department and the volunteers for the work that's going on at the Golden Lake Station. I see that you're 90% complete, and I do agree that with the cost of materials increasing the way they have, I'm amazed that you're still able to stay on budget.
So far, so good. It's eating up my contingency money, but so far, so good.
Yes.
Just one thing that's not on the report, and the fire department put up a little surprise for the township on that cemetery. I don't know if anyone's noticed that.
I know.
Yes, it's kind of nice.
It's on
Good use of space.
the back side of the sign.
Yeah,
It looks really good.
yeah, it does.
Is that one where you had the 41?
Yeah.
Yes. While we have the fire chief here, what are the plans for this fire prevention week? Is it this week?
Actually, it's with the obvious pandemic situation. We're not going door to door to talk to people.
Right.
The fire prevention officers doing things online, and it's Thursday, we'll be on Facebook Live through the public library and do a presentation there. And we're putting out advertising on some of the local radio stations, trying to hammer that message home. Since we can't go door to door and talk to people.
Once again, that's, yeah. One of the challenges with COVID. So seeing no other comments, questions, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Buckwell,
Yes.
Councillor Burns,
Yes.
Councillor Rankin Schoenfeld,
Yes.
Councillor Robinson,
Yes.
I'm a yes, that's carried. Thank you. Item 8.3 is the municipal bylaw enforcement update. I have a resolution that council accepts the municipal bylaw report as presented. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Ricky Schoenfeld. Questions or comments? Councilor Burke?
The two cabs on the side of the road, is that a charge for us to have that company pick them up? And was it necessary to have them come pick up the land?
I would have to go back to Bill to find out exactly what happened, what was there, if they don't have that information, we would
Okay.
charge for that. So we can get that information to you.
I would guess that the municipality would have to pay the pickup fee.
And I know there's an investigation as to who deposited them. We have some weeks ago. I believe.
Yeah, I said we're sure the old ways were paying food inspection.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Councilor Buckwalter?
Yes.
Councilor Burns?
Yes,
Councilor Schultz?
Yes,
Councilor Robinson?
Yes.
I'm a yes. That is carried. Thank you.
good night, Kevin.
Night,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you.
Thank
thanks,
you.
Heather.
Item 8.4 is the CEMC report. I have a resolution that council accepts the CEMC 2020 report as presented. I'm going to move in a second, moved by Councilor Robinson, seconded by Councilor Schultz. Any comments or questions?
Just remember a long time ago, we talked about, it was just a temporary position. Has anything ever happened with that?
So the discussion would be that, the original discussion was we come back and talk about it this October. And with all that's happened this year, I haven't got there yet. The present CMC has been great. We've had no issues. But if council wishes to go back to that, we'll get there before the end of the year, hopefully.
I just think it was important because we kind of talked about being temporary. Maybe there's somebody else in the community that would be interested. And then at least, then if we decide he's the guy, then at least he's permanently placed in that position.
And that would be great. So we'll get that.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Just,
Oh, sorry.
now,
Councilor
you,
Schultz.
sometimes like when I was trying to click on to see the report, like sometimes it comes up really fast and sometimes, yeah. So it's just, it has to do with our internet.
It has to do with the size of the report also.
Okay.
Like I'm finding up here, a lot of times I can click on it from right up and sometimes it doesn't.
Mhm.
But I know that the larger reports do take some more time.
Yeah. I was just wondering if it was just me.
Mine is
No,
not
the one I had the most trouble with, and I never did get it up, was the biosolid report.
Yeah,
Because it was many, many pages.
Yeah.
but I got that.
I guess it's whoever clicks on it first.
Could be.
I can get any at the end.
Right now, I can't get any of them.
Yeah, right, yeah, because I was just trying to click on the CMC. Okay, sorry.
Okay, so I will call for the vote. Councilor Buckwalter?
Yes.
Councilor Burns?
Yes,
Councilor Schultz?
Yes,
Councilor Robinson?
Yes.
And yes, that's good. Thank you. So that brings us to correspondence. I have a resolution that council accepts correspondence items 9.1.1 to 9.1.6 as information. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Robinson, seconded by Councilor Schultz. Comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Councilor Buckwalter?
Yes.
Councilor Burns?
yes,
Councilor Schultz?
yes,
Councilor Robinson?
Yes.
And a yes, that's carried. Thank you.
Mayor Bruce.
Yes.
The one that I didn't get up was federal gas taxes. There won't be changes to that, is that why it's up there?
And we bring that one up. the federal
I'm
gas-
waiting for it right now.
Okay.
meter.
Yeah, what I did was I clicked off some of my windows, and then it seemed to load really quickly. But maybe just a whole bunch of people.
What I've done is before we come in, I download the full agenda package, run it in one window, and then run all meeting in another, so that you've got all your stuff already downloaded on here and you can follow.
See, I'm wondering
Okay,
if,
that I need to know.
yeah, I know, I'm wondering if we
Well,
need
the same way
to,
you should download, like if you.
I know, I was trying to figure out how to do that.
maybe we have to have like a little insert where we can manual shortcuts. Because at home, I was able to open all these up.
Well, this is the one that I got started on.
So if you're on all that right now on meeting agenda.
Yeah.
Scroll all the way to the top. And you've got the three little dots on the right hand side where it says more.
Just wait. No, I'm not.
Download PDF.
Download PDF package. So you do that before the meeting and then it's just like downloading.
What is it download if you
Go PDF, it'll.
don't? But then I mean, where you want to find it, where you.
Then it'll show up in your another browser screen. But the data will be there. So then you can download it to your books and use it. You don't have to wait for the reports.
Why not, and we'll just, if it's okay with council, we'll just provide, Council Burton with a copy of that.
Okay.
Yeah, just go ahead.
Don't think there was any change. I think it was just a report
It was
on where
very
some of
support.
the money has been spent
Yes.
in the different municipalities.
Yeah.
Then we get to item 9.2, which is our action items. I have a resolution, 9.2.1, that the mayor be authorized to send a letter to Mr. Giesler thanking him for bringing forward his concerns, and the township will take them into consideration where warranted during the development of the trail. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Robinson, seconded by Councilor Burke. Staff wanted to give a little background.
We did receive a letter from Mr. Giesler. And he had a list of concerns.
Hey, Bruce.
Maybe we're all, let's make it this one either. So maybe just generally, I'll try to get them. He has a lot of things, and we have a lot of answers for all of those things. But I think in the actual construction of the trail and going forward, we will address what needs to be addressed and what is there. But there's some things that aren't really concerns, and some are. Certainly, the environment is a concern for all of us. I finally got a picture of them.
That's a trail.
Yeah. So what this is, I'm just well, not the picture. I don't want to lose it. This is the actual trail comes here, turns here, and this is where Mr. Giesler's property is. So when this picture is taken, there's not really much of a beaver meadow there. In fact, most of the wet area is on his side of the line, on our side.
Do we have to worry about that though, even if it's?
Well, if it's not, we're going to talk to the Ministry of Natural Resources no matter what we do. So if we need to do an environmental assessment, I'm going to come back to council and say you need to do an environmental assessment. I don't think that we have to at this time, but it's going to come back to it. So I apologize for not being able to get these things up. I don't know if I have these.
That one picture that I saw, it really looked like that building was on the road.
So
Is that just like distortion and?
when we start looking at things, we see things that might not be what other people thought they were. So there's some question as to, how close is he to the line? He may be very close to the line. One of the concerns you had, and again, I'm sorry that I can't put those things up, was his well. So this is his well. And his well is a drill well. it's actually elevated from our property, which is here, it's about 3 feet down to our property. So when you're concerned about water quality, in Ontario, we use the Goody system.
What's this one, sorry?
The Goody system, I'll explain that.
Is that really a real word?
So drilled wells are considered non-Goody,
Oh, really?
a Goody.
Okay.
So groundwater under the direct influence. So basically, if surface water can get into it, hey, there it is right there, I found it. So
So
what?
where would the road be in relation to that? Like, so if I'm looking at that well pipe, it's 30 feet?
So
away?
his property is, this is basically the line here.
Oh, really?
And
So is that-
his well, by looking at those top maps, he's almost right on the line of that well.
So that tree, that big tree is on the road,
Is on the road allowance.
right, okay.
So going back to the well, if you have concerns about water well, and what the beauty is groundwater under direct influence. So basically, if you have a dug well, it's considered a duty well because groundwater can get into it. So when you do a dug well, and your permit will tell you that you have to bank it up along the side, so the water flows off.
Right.
His is banked up along the side, and it's a drilled well. So drilled wells are never considered duty unless the casing's cracked. Then the groundwater can get in. So he has what's considered the safe as well. And the only time those are going to be contaminated is when you contaminate the aquifer. So he's in a fairly safe position.
And he's back at the end of Gravely Road.
Yes. So I'll just scroll up here. Now that I picture, I can show you a couple of things. And the pictures are surprising because I don't know what's there. So when the counselors looked at pictures, you looked at pictures as well. That area looks like some of the fill or something there. So this is, from the topographical or the aerial pictures, it looks like he's been adding fill to the low area on the road allowance that's owned by the town. Because basically the township, the road allowance goes right past his front door. So, if we have concerns about what we put on the trail, we have a lot of concerns about what goes on our other road allowance too, which is this one.
And that goes right past his front door.
Basically, yes.
And now, whose big truck was that?
Well, it's on his property. We don't know whose property it is. We didn't enter the property.
Okay, so that was his property. I get confused between his property and the road.
This township property that he's using.
So if we get to a better picture here. This is what we're considering the Wilkins Trail comes along here. You can see on the LiDAR map, that line looks like it goes right to the building.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
And then when you get over here, this is another road allowance. This is Gurlitt's, the road allowance was here. So Gurlitt's Road actually goes off the road allowance and right to the front of his house. So once it gets to this point, that's where that gate is, his gate is.
Yeah.
But this area where he's been filling, or someone's been filling, is our road allowance. So normally we don't allow people to do things on our road allowance. But the concern is, if I'm concerned about low areas or red areas on this property, then I should be concerned about what's happening here too. And because we've seen pictures of a different time, we know that that's progress.
So when would you send him a letter? And then when you send him a letter, would you talk about that?
Well, what we would do is just, we would tell him that he's got the ability to see what you've seen tonight. So the one thing that I can't open where I'm responding to things,
Mhm.
he's going to see that. But what we're saying is, thank you very much for your letter. We're going to look at your concerns and address them as we go through the trail. So this picture is actually fairly clear, but it's a little bit older. But you can see that cleared area and that fill doesn't extend into the road allowance here. Only in the picture. And again, you see that cut off here. So his well is right here. You see the propane tank there. So it's not looking like it's on his property, but LiDAR is distorted sometimes. So it may be that but he is close to the line, no matter where it is. So what council had directed staff to do, we haven't done it yet. We're doing it in our spare time to survey that because I was very concerned about this.
Right.
So the survey is going to say where the line is.
Right.
And If his outbuilding is on our property, you don't bulldoze it down, you make an adjustment for that to be there.
Could you maybe move the floor into it?
I think it's better to be good neighbors. So, sure. So I think, although he has concerns, I think we can address those concerns and move forward. But you can't ask for someone on the neighboring property to do something without you doing it. So if we're going to look at environmental controls and protection, we've got to look at the area as opposed to the 66-foot area. So what we're asking.
That picture shows the huge body of water that's actually on this property.
Yeah, and even on that picture, we talk about huge body of water. That was a marshy area. It was a stream. There wasn't really any water sitting there in that picture. You couldn't really see the water. So it hasn't, and from one of the councils at the time, the property lot, they said they walked through there and there was no water. So beaver meadows tend to have water 1 year, and next year we may not have anything. It could be water for 20 years.
But this year it would have been.
This year was actually not a bad year for the first part. Now it's
Now it
changed a
would
little bit.
Now we.
I'll see if I can get this up now, see if it comes up. That's it. I'm not sure which one's which now. But perhaps council's satisfied with just sending a letter saying that there's concerns.
I guess maybe that's not the best thing.
Which is basically what the resolution is saying. So if council's okay with that, I'll call for the vote. There's the resolution there. No, that's the next one.
Sorry, I got far.
Sorry. There's the resolution. I will call for the vote. Councilor Buckwald. Yes. Councilor Burns.
Yes.
Councilor Ray-Schoenfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Robinson.
Yes.
And yes. Yes, Councilor Burns.
And when this letter goes up, are we going to say that the township will be doing the survey?
We've already told them that we're doing the survey.
Okay, he knows that.
Thank you. So that is carried. Item 9.2.2 is the municipal operating funding stream, phase 2. I have a resolution that the Township of North Algona Wilberforce apply for additional funding under the municipal operating funding stream as outlined in the letter dated October 1st, 2020 from the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Steve Clark. And further, that staff requests from the Ministry of Finance and Housing an extension on applying beyond the October 30th, 2020 deadline, requesting a new deadline of November 6th, 2020. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Ray-Schoenfeld, seconded by Councilor Burns. So maybe staff can give us a little more detail.
So attached to the agenda is the letter from Steve Clark announcing that the phase 2 funding is open for applications. And this is the 110,000 we got in phase 1. Now we can apply for phase 2. So we have to really demonstrate that we're going to need the money. So right now, it's pretty difficult to demonstrate the good of money we have. But to apply for this grant, you have to have a resolution of council. So what we're asking council to do is make the resolution so that if things change 2 weeks from now and the government says now you have to do all these different things for COVID, we can apply. And the other part of it that says we want the deadline till 30th, but we want to do November 6th, is something that the minister said in his letter that municipalities comply to have the deadline extended to November 6th. So what we're asking is A, do the resolution, and B, why not extend it as far as we can?
Councilor Rivers.
How much of the money have we spent? Do you have a rough idea?
I don't have for this meeting, but we're in the neighborhood of 80,000,
And we have 110.
and we have 110, so things could change next week, that we had to spend $50,000 next year, and we could be out to lunch, we could be part of, without a camp, because we can't fly, so at least by council saying yes right now, you're good for a month to be able to come up with something that can do it.
And so the owl that you purchased, that'll come out of the.
That'll come out of that.
And is there any other technical stuff?
We're working.
Councilor Burton and then Councilor Buckle.
The money that we lost on the transfer station,
That's all in that. Too.
Councilor Buckle.
Cellular-based internet to the township office for live streaming meetings.
And that's something that we can put something together on that.
Because there's no way we're gonna get anything land-based in the immediate future.
So again, we have a month to do that, if we do this.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, call for the vote. Councilor Buckle.
Yes.
Councilor Burke.
yes.
Councilor Rankin-Schoenfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Robinson.
Yes,
And yes, it's carried. Thank you. Item 10.1 is to amend our procedural bylaw and have a resolution. Now therefore, the Council of North Algona Wilberforce Township enact the following bylaw. Bylaw 2020-77, being a bylaw to amend the bylaw 2018-105, a bylaw to govern the proceedings of council, the conduct of its members, and the calling of meetings. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Buckwald, seconded by Councilor Byrne. Do you have the background?
I'm working on getting the bylaw actually happening. So just for council information, this is to allow us to continue with electronic meetings. And there's also an adjustment in there to allow us, I think of this one bigger. There's also a line in there about how we're going to be able to post things on the internet.
It says electronic recordings are provided through a link on the township website for a period, not less than a 2-week period. Electronic records may be retained for corporate files. That's probably all right.
Mm-hmm. So I've got it up here now. So basically, all we're trying to do is allow us to do the electronic meetings for now. If council wants to look at the procedural bylaw, I would suggest that we wait until the new treasurer is in place. But this allows us to be protected, because after the end of September, we couldn't do this on our own. We have to have something, we have to have a bylaw in place. The emergency order is all over.
So allowing us to do it if there was a night when for some reason you couldn't come, a bad
Yes.
snowstorm, then I could still participate.
And you'd be considered quorum.
Or it could be like Donald Trump in my hospital room.
Yes, and then you could go drive up the street and wait.
Yeah, I could go myself.
Andrew, is that wording that came in from the county? Because I know the county just passed a similar bylaw to allow for electronic participation.
Yeah, we looked at other municipalities that we planned to do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Councilor Buckwald.
Yes.
Councilor Burns. Yes. Councilor Rankin-Schoenfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Robinson.
yes.
And a yes, that's carried. Thank you. Are there any matters of urgency? Notice of motions? Reports from committees we've covered. Upcoming meetings and unfinished business, our next regular council meeting will be October 20th, 2020. The start time will be 6 as opposed to 7. Yes, Councilor Burr.
Do you know anything, you want to know what start up the meeting to be there for us?
The committee meetings. I think because of COVID, we're trying to stay with the same format for now. And it's something we can revisit when the new clerk comes to see when we might restart committees.
Thank you.
So that brings us to 15.1. That council, I have a resolution, the council going to the closed meeting at 8:40 or 8:42, 8:40?
40.
8:40 p.m. Pursuant to section 239(2)(b) of the Municipal Act for 5 personal matters about identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. And I got a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Schoenfeld. I'll call the vote. Councillor Buchwald.
Yes.
Councillor Burns.
Yes.
Councillor Riker Schoenfeld.
Yes.
Councillor Robinson.
Yes.
And a yes. That's carried. Thank you. We are now closed. Does anybody need a bathroom break?